Hi, it's Christina Myers, host of The Stina Life. In today's episode, I'm going to answer questions that have come in from followers of the podcast about the Ascension process. As we are all navigating uncharted territories right now, I am bringing through guided information as well as my own lived perspective on this transition and what might be next. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to the podcast. This week, I wanted to dive into a lot of questions that have been coming in through my channels about the Ascension process. I've had lots and lots of questions coming through and really kind of talk about my own experiences since this portal to this new consciousness gateway opened. So let's get into it. We have had lots of shifts, of course, since 8/31. There's been distortions of time, distortions of reality. A lot of things just feel very weird and very floaty, very much out of body, not understanding kind of what time and day and space we're really in. And the ascension symptoms especially have been crazy. We've had extreme exhaustion, lots of pressure in our crown chakras. We've had a lot of purging going on, lots of work on the root chakra, which is tied to our, of course, early childhood experiences, our early conditioning, having to let go of a lot of different things. And so I wanted to kind of just dive into some of those things. So one of the common questions that has come through is, did everyone who is on the earth plane right now make it into the fifth dimension? So when the portal was opened, and I want to be really clear, this was an unlocking of 5D that happened on August 31st, 2023, and that happened at 5:55 a.m. Pacific time. After checking in when that shift happened, my guides have informed me that 49.5% of those living on the earth plane have made their way into that new portal, into that new transition into the fifth dimension. And that about 50.5% of those still on the earth plane are still in some sort of other realm, mostly 3D realm. Some may be in the fourth dimensional realm. So that's a little fuzzy as to how many people are actually making their way through. So there's still a lot of, transitional stages. There's still a lot of this. And we're just at the tip of the iceberg of this transition, at the very tip of the iceberg of the transition. It is going to take some time to get through the full journey of fifth dimension. And that process is going to look very different for every single person. And how that transition and how that integration process is going to look very, very different. And again, it could take months, it could take years to move through this process. And that is going to be very specific for you. I'm also receiving that depending on what kind of self-examination work you have done, what kind of releasing work you have done when this transition took place, is what will kind of determine your timeline and process of moving through this fifth dimension consciousness and these levels of the fifth dimension. So if you've done a lot of preparatory work, meaning you've done a lot of releasing, even though we are still going through a lot of releasing right now, this is a major death process we're going through. There will be more of that to happen. But if you hadn't done as much clearing work, that may be pretty intense right now. That may be accelerated right now. Versus if you have done a lot of work leading up to this, you may have some, still some stuff to clear, but it may be a little bit less intense of a clearing that you're going through. I was reading an article on the publication Medium recently that was written in 2020. And I thought this gave a really good explanation as to what 5 dimension is and kind of what to expect. So I'm going to read this really word for word of how this was published. It says the 5th dimension is the realm of higher level thought forms. It is beyond 3D and 4D. 5D represents the finest and highest ideals of the 4th dimension and contains the highest versions of the 4th dimensional beings. Some say that those beings in the 5th dimension focus solely on spiritual advancement for themselves and the universe. Many believe that the 5th dimension causal plane is where the higher self, angels, beneficial ETs, galactics, and other spiritual guides for 3D humans are mostly from. Others, however, put most of these spirit guides in the 6th and higher dimensions. Some say humans entering 5D transform or transmute their physical bodies into a more crystalline form in the lower 5th dimension and into non-physical, quote, light body form at the high end of 5D. Our foods become, quote, lighter as we transition to a breatharian diet, consuming only air and sunlight. Our light bodies reflect our emotional astral and mental causal bodies. Our multicolored chakras shape our emotions and personality while in our physical form. When they become fully purified and open, they glow in unison to form a white or golden light body, which contains all colors. Along with unconditional love, non-judgment is a key characteristic of 5D. That makes sense since non-judgment is required for unconditional love. It means fully understanding that there is no good or bad and that everything and everyone has value and purpose. Desires and fears are less pronounced in 5D, especially at the highest levels of this dimension. This is a good thing because thoughts, universes, and alternate selves are more instantly materialized in the 5th dimension. Also, at the highest levels of 5D, personal timelines, past, present, future, and our different reincarnations are all experienced simultaneously. Because of that, our different incarnational selves can interact with each other to further their collective and individual experiences. This is really interesting because what I was witnessing in clients leading up to this transition is a collapsing of all of the lifetimes that they've ever lived. It was like all of these were accordion style and they were collapsing down all on top of each other, which was creating a lot of clutter in the energy fields, a lot of what I would call lower emotional states, lower density beings as well were showing up leading up to this transition, which was causing a lot of confusion and chaos as well. Now that we have transitioned, those lower density pieces are not going to be as prominent or even have an ability to be realistically manifested in this particular dimension as well. So that's going to really, really, really change all kinds of things as we are moving forward. Another question that came through was what happens to those in the 3D realm? Can they still ascend to the 5th dimension? So the channeled information I have received is yes. Those that are in the 3rd dimension realm can still ascend to the 5th dimension. This is completely up to them, though. It is up to each individual to consciously make that transition if they choose to do so. And it's also part of the contract. So the contract that they have chosen is going to determine if they are going to transition into this next level of consciousness or if they're going to stay in the 3rd dimension consciousness. If people are in the 3rd dimension and they're wanting to move to the 5th dimension, most of what needs to occur in order to do that is to release from all attachments. This is attachments to your ego. This is attachments to emotions. This is attachments to storylines. The big one that is locking people in to this third dimension consciousness is the victim mentality. This is happening to me versus this is happening for me mentality. That people are attacking me, people are being terrible to me, and creating those stories around that victim mentality. And the victim mentality comes from generally an underlying situation or emotion that we cannot seem to unlock and release from. The biggest hurdle in all of this, right, is to be able to surrender and trust. Surrendering and trusting. And that's a hard one for most human beings, to surrender and trust and feel like, oh, there's a bigger purpose around all of this. That's a hard one to do, because we get attached to wanting to have outcomes be a certain way, wanting to have a certain lifestyle or a certain appearance or a certain this or a certain that. When we realize we just have to completely surrender and trust and not have attachment to any outcome or any person or any situation, that is when we can really fully move into a different mindset that is required for us to move forward, right? To move into that higher viewpoint. For those that are choosing to stay in the 3D realm, if that's their contract, then what I am being shown is that they will be able to finish out their contracts. What that world looks like, I don't know. And I don't know if that will be shown to me or to others who have moved into fifth dimension consciousness. I don't know if we'll be able to see anything or if we'll be able to watch it all, but not be impacted by it. That's not been clear yet, but it is very clear that those contracts are what they are, and they can be fulfilled or changed by the person. The next big question that came through is, will there be a way to reincarnate into the 3D earth plane? From what I am receiving from Spirit, no, this will not be possible to do this. There is obviously a separation happening between the third dimension and the fifth dimension. And that third dimension earth is the programming, the context of it is very much an outdated paradigm. And that outdated paradigm is not possible to return to when the earth plane, Gaia herself, has shifted into this higher realm of consciousness. Those who are choosing to stay in, again, the 3D realm will do so. They'll finish out their contracts. But it will not be possible, I believe, this is my opinion, to come back into a 3D human form, because that Gaia will not be in that form anymore. Are there other planets or places or other areas that a 3D construct is available? Yes, that's absolutely possible, that there could be other planes, other planets, other places within our very vast galaxy that three-dimensional beings could reincarnate and go there. I mean, anything is possible. Anything is possible. And I think that we aren't supposed to necessarily know what that looks like. But yeah, anything could be possible within that realm for sure. So another question that has come through is like, how did all this happen? How did this happen? How did we get here? How was this designed? Can it be stopped or slowed down in any way? I really ask myself this every day. How did this happen? How is this my life? How did all this occur? I'm not quite sure, and I'm still getting my head wrapped around it. Really, the only good information that I have come across is a book called The Freedom Transmissions by Carissa Schumacher. It is a series of channeled messages that she began channeling in 2019. And she channels Yeshua. One of the transmissions in this book clearly states that this was all designed to shift us into this new consciousness, and that there was a series of voids that were set up beginning in March of 2020, and that Yeshua and Gaia together designed these voids. And it was designed to move humanity out of this chaotic state of the current world and back into what we really are truly meant to do, which is to be, be, and be in harmony, be in love, not in chaos. In the book, he says, quote, "Your world is increasingly complex, volatile, unstable, controlling. It has become a world focused on expectation, entitlement, arrogance, image, victim ideology, and ownership. A world so demanding and noisy that it dulls your senses, including your intuition and discernment, if you do not have the discipline and discernment to know when you need to take time away. A world so addicted to anxiety, chaos, and substances that it came back to you feeling like everything is spiraling out of control. And in some ways, it is." He says the rarest beings on your planet, the lightest, are really the most balanced. They radiate from the center and emanate a peace that is simple, stable, surrendered, and still. These four energies are the divine. He says you have a choice to align your will with the divine will, or take matters into your own hands and make imbalanced choices that go against divine will. Mainly choices of the separate self that are not for the greater good of all. And he goes on to talk about the fact that there are 7 imbalances of the mind that keeps us locked in, per se, to these imbalances. He says the 7 imbalances are the ego's distortions in perceptions, actions, projections, and behaviors. They are what contribute to and create the illusion self, the supposed to self, the story of self that causes you to see yourself through a lens of distortions, which you then project onto others and the world. The 7 imbalances he talks about are: number 1, perception of darkness or separation; number 2, tyrannical desire and lustful greed; number 3, ignorance, denial, or complacency; number 4, excitement over death or endings or enslavement to the flesh; number 5, human want and lust or desires of the flesh; number 6, foolish wisdom or not aligning with divine will; and 7, wrathful wisdom or judgment. These are the key components that I have seen people get really locked into. And this is why many things felt very out of control and spiraling as we were leading up to August 31st. It was a magnification of these illusions, of these imbalances of the mind that were keeping people locked in. And you could say people were going more dark. And that's kind of a loose term to say people were not able to unshackle and release from those things that were keeping them locked into the imbalance in the mind. He says that, all of this was divinely designed, and none of this could have been stopped, even if there was a perception that there was a lot of people trying to stop it. And, from my perspective and what I was experiencing, it felt like a lot of people were trying to stop this, that they did not want the light holders to be able to shine their light brightly, to help try and be a beacon for others, to also shine their light, to unshackle from these imbalances in the world. It felt very heavy. And that's where that dark terminology came in. It felt very, very heavy. And in some ways it was a little bit scary to feel that much intensity of this heavier, lower density energy coming to the forefront. So yeah, I mean, honestly, when you surrender and trust and you realize that there is a bigger divine plan that none of us are able to truly understand or see, but when we trust in that, when we are in discernment, when we're trusting our intuition, when we're living in our truth, we are able to ebb and flow through these transitions in a different way and a much easier way than those that are resisting that transition and not trusting that there is divine guidance all around us. So that's a big one. Another question that has come through is, what do I do now that I have transitioned into this 5D consciousness? The really big message that's coming through right now is to rest and to just be. As I talked about after that first question, that Medium article, this crystalline structure, this crystalline DNA structure that is activating right now is what everyone is kind of bringing online. And this is causing a massive shift within your physical body. It's a big, huge shift. And we also have all of this other activity, solar flares and all this stuff, which I've been talking about for a long time, also coming onto the planet right now. So it is really pushing stuff out in a big, big way. As I stated in, I can't remember if it was the last episode or a couple episodes I've talked about this. What the guides have shown me is that it's like a battery charging on a phone. There is a certain percentage, and each person is going through their own, charging process per se. And so everybody's at their own charging percentage. Some are at 100%, some are maybe at 85%, some are at 50%. Again, it's kind of depending upon how much work you did moving into the 5D transition. And again, you contracted to go into 5D. There's a contract there. So if you have a contract, you did that. But it will also depend on how much work you've done coming into it, is how fast you can process. Also, the other thing that we've been getting messages around, not just me, but some other people that are in my close circle, is the more you rest, the more you release, the more you just be, the faster you're going to actually process through all of this. There is also this death process occurring, which I talked about. It is the death of the ego. It is the death of the old version of ourselves. The things that we have been very familiar with in our human form. And this is why relationship dynamics really have shifted so quickly. And, there's just been all kinds of very shift stuff. And you've been very clear on what you're wanting to allow into your energy field moving forward. And so perhaps you have had to make those choices to say, okay, I'm going to make some adjustments on the people that I'm going to be hanging out with. Maybe this doesn't feel in alignment anymore. And they also have been making those choices for themselves as well as to what they're calling in and what they're aligning to. So there's lots of shifts going on within this as well. And again, things are going to look different as we make our way through this process. It's going to take adjusting. It's a process. And it's pretty unprecedented. We've never gone through this before. So trying to have some expert who knows exactly what the game plan is kind of impossible. There is no expert because this has never been done before. And while there are those folks, including myself, who receives channeled messages and some visions about what the possibilities of those timelines look like, again, we just don't know. Everything is uncharted territory at this time. So the last question that came through is what comes next? There's been more questions, but these are kind of the big ones. What comes next? Again, as I just was saying, your guess is as good as mine. Good as mine. I don't know exactly what that looks like. Again, we're being asked to trust and surrender. There is a bigger plan in place, of course. I think that also we are being asked to move into harmony, to peace, to love. The astrology is definitely supporting more transitions. When I look at what's coming for the remainder of September into October and November, it's big transition times. On Saturday, September 23rd, we entered the Libra season. And this is really asking for rebalancing and harmonizing of the energies. And with Libra being in our South node for the collective, we are releasing the lower octave of this energy, which is over accommodation, people pleasing. Libras like to try and keep the peace, even if it doesn't serve them, meaning, they really are imbalanced as a result of that, because we tend to sacrifice our own health and happiness to try and keep the peace and try to keep everybody else happy. Letting people dictate our decisions on our behalf, that's another lower octave kind of feeling of Libra. Libra's the bicycle built for two. It just wants to be in love and be harmonious, and it's ruled by Venus, and it's just, all about this like rose-colored glasses kind of outlook. But we are, sovereign beings. We do have needs of our own. And if we're constantly trying to put others before ourselves and not taking care of ourselves or loving ourselves, that can cause some imbalances, right? And we also have Aries in the North Node for the collective. So these two energies are quite opposite, because Aries is all about stepping into our own sovereignty. It's about taking our power back. It's about taking our own authority back and trusting ourselves, our instincts, our intuition, and knowing that we have the fortitude and the willpower to make that happen. So it's a recalibration, it's a repositioning of energies and of people within your life. And I feel that, at least at the global level, this fall equinox, for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, is a recalibration of the earth energies as well. And I think that we will start to see more of this collectively, no matter what dimension you're in. I think more of that's going to come to the forefront and be much more conscious. And as we move into October, we have even more shifts, because it's eclipse season. And we have the solar eclipse first and then the lunar eclipse taking place. And, eclipses bring sudden and swift changes very quickly in. And they can't really be stopped. I mean, these are things that cause massive disruption very quickly. So, expect the unexpected with eclipse season. And then, of course, we have Scorpio season that comes in at that same time. And Scorpio is all about, bringing to the surface, what's hidden. There's more unearthing, a deepening of a release, a death and rebirth process coming in. And that's going to be felt. At a deep, deep level, it's going to be felt, and we think about fall, especially in the Northern Hemisphere. What are we looking? What's going on? Well, things are all dying. It's a death process, because we are closing out this season of vibrancy, of abundance. And things are starting to shrivel. They're starting to fall. They're starting to, return back to the earth to be regenerated. So that's going to be a big theme as we move into the fall. And then we move to winter months, and it's hibernation, right? It's coming inward. It's doing introspection work. So I believe that collectively, more people are going to feel what's happening even more this fall when we move to October and into November, especially. There's going to be more collective understanding of what's shifting. And I believe that those that are not conscious about these shifts are going to become conscious about it. I believe that there may be outer influences, collective shifts with Gaia, with the outer world that could become very much a prominent force. And I think by some it could be perceived as chaotic. And again, I don't know how much some will see and some will not see. I can see that there's almost like these veils or these glass walls that are up that maybe you can kind of see each other, but you really can't. I was talking about the fact that, with the shifts, like people just kind of go out of your life really quickly. Like you don't hear from them, see them, or anything. It's almost like you're invisible. And I think some of that definitely is going on. But I do think there is opportunities where those paths are crossing, and there's a reason why that's happening. So if you're running into somebody who you don't think you might necessarily see, there's a reason they're wanting to put that person in front of you at this time. But I think the biggest thing that we all have to come back to is that focusing on our internal world, our internal viewpoint, right? That we must stay grounded, we must stay balanced, we have to stay in the heart. We have to stay in the heart. That is the most important thing. So while, there may be tornadoes swirling all around you, imagine yourself just being like in this Buddha state, right? This very calm, grounded, peaceful state. And while everything may be swirling around you, chaos, and people are screaming, running, things are flying all around you, you are just there, just present, just being, and being in peace, being in love, and letting things unfold the way that they're supposed to unfold. Because everything is happening for a reason. Every single thing on our planet happens for a reason. Everything in your life is happening for a reason. The people that are brought into your life, there's no coincidence why they're brought in. There's no coincidence when they leave. It's the revolving door, people come in, people go out. Situations come in, situations go out. Everything passes. It all moves, constantly moving. So I guess the big lesson in all of this as we are transitioning here into this whole new uncharted territory is just to be, and I don't know if you can hear the thunder as I'm recording this, just a big roar of thunder came in. And thank you to the water and to the thunder elements for coming in, because they are shaking things up and they are cleansing the earth right now. And we need it. We need it so much. Gaia is asking for this cleanse, and we're asking for this cleansing time for sure. I am wishing you all the best. If you have other questions, feel free to reach out via the podcast or on YouTube where this is published, or on my social channels. And I will try and do another Q&A sometime soon. Sending you lots and lots of love and a fabulous week. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please rate, review, and share with your friends and family. You can also follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Stina Life, or visit my website at stinamyers.com to learn more about classes, online offerings, and other events coming up. See you next time.